With us, we have Alex Ibrahim. Alex, head of international capital market at the New York Stock Exchange, and we were lucky enough to find him available for a short conversation for Fireside Chat, a little bit about the trends, what happened in the past year, about new ways to engage the capital markets. So, Alex, how are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm in New York here today in our office. So finally, I'm back here at the what we call 11 Wall Street Tower. It's exciting.
Actually, it is. I would love to be there with you. Hopefully, shortly, I'll come to visit.
Absolutely, and you can come and ring the bell with us.
Wow. Okay. This is a date, Alex. I'll take you on that.
Absolutely.
So tell our members a little bit about your activity and the New York Stock Exchange activity. Like everybody knows it's a stock exchange, but don't really understand the actual operation and what you do.
Yep. So the NYSE, we owned by ICE, Intercontinental Exchange, the largest operator of exchange, market data, and mortgage processing application in the world. We are a huge company. NYSE is where we trade equities. That's where we have companies listed in our platform. We have an incredible franchise of the best companies in the world, about 2,500 companies represented by 47 countries are listed with us. We have a combined market valuation of $30 trillion.
Wow.
So it's larger than the GDP of a lot of countries combined. So the largest and the most prestigious brands in the world are listed here with us. So it's an exciting place to be. I've been here for 20 years approximately, and I have helped many companies from outside the US to be listed here in the platform.
That's incredible. I mean, you saw it's not about past year trend. You saw 2 decades of what is going on in capital markets. This is phenomenal.
That is correct, and it's very interesting to see what's happening in Israel right now because there's such an excitement in the marketplace for Israeli companies to conduct IPOs, to do business combinations. We're starting to see Israeli companies raising capital through a SPAC. So the dynamic in the Israeli markets, it's amazing, and people are paying attention. But but if you look around the world, we also see other markets as dynamic, like Southeast Asia. There's a lot of traction going on there. China for sure, Latin America, Brazil, Mexico, and of course Europe, to certain countries in Europe. So it's been very exciting in the last few years here, especially for me that have been here for such a long time. And seeing this wave now, it's fun.
Yeah, that's remarkable. So let's try to focus on the past year. We had COVID impact, and capital markets has a very interesting impact from COVID because it's really kind of on one hand, like everybody are alarmed from this huge pandemic and what we're going to do. On the second, on the other side, a lot of people are starting to trade. More are getting more familiarized with the digital onboarding system, so they can trade remotely and do something while they're at home. So the entire sphere, and if you look at FinTech company that focus on trading platform or provide that kind of technology or service to this industry, they're also boomed, exploded in terms of what they're doing in business. So what can you tell us from your perspective on the past year?
Yeah, I mean, last year was an incredible year for the global capital markets. A horrendous year for the world with the pandemic. But it was very interesting to see companies actually saw that as an opportunity to raise capital. And we saw a lot of companies in the US doing follow-on offerings and companies and IPO SPACs raising capital because they needed that to raise capital to fuel innovation, to be able to maintain employees in place, to actually help to grow the business. We saw a lot of M&A activity. Those M&As, you need capital, you need cash to be able to buy assets. And we saw an incredible market. And if you look at 2020 was probably our best year ever.
Wow.
The month of September and October were like the two this month for the NYSE. So yes, it was an incredible year in terms of capital raising. It was not a great year, as we know, because of the pandemic. But what's interesting, on the beginning of 2021, it was started like the first quarter. It was very similar to what we saw in 2020. And we had an incredible year, incredible quarter also, for companies from all over the world raising capital, conducting transactions in our platform. So I believe this will continue, Tal. Maybe will be a little bit of slowing down around the summer months. Very hard to predict, right? But the pipeline is incredible. I mean, we're pitching companies from all over.
Do you see a particular or several sub-segments in the past year that you saw flourishing more than others?
I mean, if you're talking about sectors, if we look across the world, technology has been the main sector for us and for the markets. Last year, at the beginning of the pandemic, we saw a lot of SPACs going to the market, and followed by biotech companies, and then we saw technology companies. But in the last 6 to 9 months, the majority of companies coming to the market, they are in the technology space. And this is not only a US phenomenon, it is really a global phenomenon. We listed companies from Canada in the tech space, from the UK, from Germany, from China, from Indonesia, from Singapore, from Brazil. So it is really, really a global phenomenon. And I think this will continue.
Okay. So we had a session today about, we had a panel about investment when we talked a little bit about ESG and how it's becoming more and more common, and more investors are looking for that. It has its own problems with gaining the data, but the general sense is that ESG is really on the rise on various fintech or non-fintech.
Yeah.
Did you see this happening like during 2020?
Yeah, ESG has become a huge topic globally. And when we talk to our issuers, more and more the board, the executives, they want to see a ESG strategy in place, and they want to make sure that the market understand what they're doing. So what we're seeing now, companies as they prepare to go public, they're really talking to us because we have an incredible ESG resource platform, and we are actually advising those companies to tap into this world. Because if today you don't have a clear ESG strategy in the market, investors will ask. So you want to be ready for that. It doesn't matter if you're in the tech space, biotech space, or you're a financial service company. Companies more and more, they are starting to invest resources to have a dedicated ESG plan in place, and they want to make sure that they actually demonstrate that plan to investors.
So it's phenomenal. We see this cross sectors and just on the rise, and a lot of people don't understand how this might benefit to them. And we actually had some workshops about this topics with some financial institutions to try to convey on what are the resources they should put into it.
Yeah.
So going back to Israel, where we are, you mentioned the SPAC, which is blooming in Israel. Now, the thing about Israel is that market awareness to fintech is high from the beginning. Okay, all the stakeholders in the market are very active: the financial institutions, techs, investors, regulators, a lot of multinationals. So it's very broadly discussed. So once a SPAC is going on, like Pyramid or eToro, it feels like the world is full of SPACs, and Israel is looking at it as something that's not a phenomenon. This is like the new way to enter the U.S. market. And now we heard about UK starting doing SPACs, and other stock exchange around the world. We're working closely with the Warsaw Stock Exchange, for example. We know they're looking at it as well. So what do you think about that? How do you see that?
Yeah, the SPACs last year was a huge part of what we saw in capital formation in the US. and it continues in the first quarter 2021. What we're seeing now, Tal, is that those SPACs, they need to eventually do a business combination, right? So we have been listing the SPACs, not only from the US-based sponsors raising capital, but we're starting to see more and more non-US SPACs coming to the market. So those SPACs, eventually, they will have to find an asset either in their country or the geography region where they're based, to be able to deploy the cash and buy an asset. But what we are seeing lately is that even if you are a US SPAC incorporating the US, sponsors are based here in the US, they are looking for opportunities outside the US. Mm-hmm. So we're starting to see a lot of movement. Israel has become a target because of the high quality of the technology companies that you have. Companies, high growth, they have a global footprint, they have demonstrated incredible run in front of investors and others. So the SPACs, they're looking for those companies. And as you mentioned before, there are quite a few names that have been announced a potential business combination with a SPAC. I think this will continue because if you look at the number of SPACs that are out there, the last number that I heard, there were like around 300 SPACs publicly traded in the US that eventually will have to find a target.
Yeah.
And I believe those, because what we are seeing right now, it's not only going to be in the US, it's going to be globally. And Israel is an incredible market. The ecosystem for technology is so vibrant. There's so much energy, excitement over there. So they see that as a potential area where they will find their next acquisition.
That sounds perfect for the company.
It sounds very exciting.
It fits well with the organization, the way of thinking, going out of the country. So we have SPAC on the one hand, but there are different methodologies you can use in the market, and the most familiar one is in doing an IPO, which and from my point of view, when I've been talking to private companies, IPO is something they don't rush into because of the high scrutiny and a lot of resources that they need to put in, which are not focused on the business itself, but on being public and being able to report the investors and align to all the restrictions and regulation. Did you see a difference in the amount of IPOs because of SPACs in the past year? How do you deal with SPACs versus a IPO?
Yeah. Last year, as I mentioned, was really the year of SPACs. So we raised more capital through SPACs than IPOs. But it doesn't mean that the market, it's either one or the other. The market's so huge in the US, there's so much money that we're looking for opportunities. So there is enough space for SPACs and IPOs, as we saw in the first quarter of this year. So I think there will be different conversations going. The sponsors, they want to raise capital because they want to do a business acquisition in the near future. So that market will be there. They'll be able to raise money, and then eventually they will do the business combination. What is interesting is to see from the other side of the equation, where those targets, these are operating companies that have been talking to bankers or internally, should I do an IPO or should I do a business combination with a SPAC? Mm-hmm. So that conversation, in a lot of cases in Israel, they're going. So the management team, the board, they have to decide what is the best alternative for the company, right? But what we have seen, the SPAC, what we call dispacking or the business combination, it's a very valuable it's a very easy process for a lot of those companies to come to the market. They prefer the IPO route because they're already starting to work on the process. They have everything in place. They can choose route. I think will be a conversation. It's going to be case by case. I am pretty sure many SPACs are approaching companies in Israel, Brazil, Southeast Asia, UK, and they will be debating with their advisor what is the correct route. At this moment, the SPAC market is super vibrant, and we're starting to see a lot of business combinations. But don't forget, the IPO market also, it is It's pretty strong. A few weeks ago, we listed Coupang. This was the largest tech IPO, actually the largest IPO in the U.S. capital markets in the last 2 years. It raised $5 billion, listed on the NYSE. Coupang, incredible. So they decided to go through the IPO route. So it is a case by case, but I am sure management team and boards, they are evaluating those options.
That's unbelievable numbers. I mean, SPACs, IPO, and everything in between. But also we talked about another method that maybe is less familiar, like people are less familiarized with it, which is direct listing, where we see companies like Spotify or Coinbase that are moving towards that realm. So what exactly is the difference, and why should a company go on a direct listing versus other alternatives?
Yeah, I mean, we pioneered the direct listing, as you may recall, with Spotify. We worked with Spotify and with the SEC to create rules to allow this process to take place. Direct listing works really well for companies that don't need cash. But they have very robust shareholder base, like investors, early stage investors, employees that actually participated, have received shares over a period of time, and they want to be able to monetize that. They want to trade those shares. So the direct listing helps companies that actually don't need to do an IPO. They don't want to do a SPAC because they don't need, but they want to go public. They want to be a publicly traded company where they create a mechanism for those shareholders that they are in the company for a long time to come to the market. Spotify for the first one, and was a huge success, followed by Slack. We also did Palantir, we did Asana, and a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, we listed Roblox, over $50 billion company in the gaming sector that I'm sure that you know very well.
Yeah.
And we work with others, and you will see 2020 quite a few global tech companies. I mean global because we will see direct listings coming from outside the US now, tapping the US capital market with this process.
So wonderful. I want to summarize everything really, because you shared in such short time so much knowledge and information about the capital market in the US, which is, as you know, for Israeli companies is something that is very attractive. And I'm sure that we'll keep seeing this traction of Israeli company moving to towards the US through the New York Stock Exchange. So thank you very much for sharing everything and the information, and thank you for the time. A wonderful session.
Yeah.
And I hope next year to host you physically, and maybe during the year meet you in New York to ring the bell. We'll talk about it later.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me here, Tal. It was a pleasure. Good luck in the conference. Sounds extremely exciting. And please let me know if some of your colleagues or people in the attendance who have questions. I'll be very happy to talk to them directly.
That'd be fantastic.
All right.
We'll make sure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tal. Have a good day.